Hey y'all, welcome back to my shop. I'm James Wright, and I wanted to show you today how to make a groove with hand tools. Basically, this is a piece of oak I pulled out of an old piece of furniture. It has a 1/4 inch groove in it that's set in a 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch deep. A very common groove used for insetting panels. And I'm making a coffee table, and I need to put a panel into the bottom of a drawer. So I need to make a 1/4 inch groove. Now, how do you do that with hand tools? The basic way is you grab your chisel and you basically go to town and you chisel it out. And that works great, and it's actually not that fast, it's not that slow, it goes pretty well. The issue is it's very easy to mess up. It's very easy to go offline or cause an issue, and it's just not quite what you want, and it's a little slower than if you were to basically create a jig for the chisel. And so that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to create a grooving plane that puts the chisel into it, and we'll run down that and create the groove. So I have, thankfully, an old chisel, a rather junky chisel, that I can get rid of the handle. And I'm going to take the iron from the chisel and turn that into the iron in my new grooving plane. And for the wood, I went outside with an axe and I was going to chop down a tree, or actually a branch, but I came across this piece of white oak, and I'm in love with it. It is beautiful. I mean, the grain on it is perfectly straight. I just pulled this out of the wood pile. Previous owner of the house put a wood pile out back, chopped this up. So it's split, and so I know that the grain is perfectly straight down either side, and this is going to work perfectly for me. So I'm going to clean it up and turn it into a molding plane. So come along for the journey. Let's see how it's done.
Now the first thing to do is to create a reference face. I had to clean up one side completely, and this actually was fairly easy. It split so smooth and so straight that I could go straight with the plane to the first face. I do not have a very good plane for this, so it took a little bit longer than normal, but thankfully I'm only using a section of it to create this, and so I only needed to plane down one end. It did have to be flat, as well as no twist, and smooth, and that was a little more difficult than I was expecting. Then I cut down one end and make sure that that is 90 degrees to the reference face, and then do all the measurements to then cut off the other end. So I'm cutting off an 11-inch block of this piece of firewood. With the one side and both ends cut off and square to the reference face, I can then start cleaning up the other three sides. All three of those ended up being long cuts, which, oh well, it's something you gotta get used to, and something I've had to learn. I've also found that cleaning up the shop in between is very useful for me, so you'll see me sweeping every now and then. So I make a cut and then put it back on the vise and plane it down and make it smooth. Then that allows me to draw all the lines needed to make the next cut, and to cut all the way down through that. I'm learning, I just got the two frame saws, and I'm learning how to use them. So you'll see me bringing them in from time to time to try them out and to see what they can do right. Now that I've cleaned off that side, I can then shape it out and cut off the final side. This will give me a block 11 inches by 2.5 by 1.5 inch. Now we can plane down the final side and make ourselves a piece. I took out the calipers to actually check its thickness and was pleasantly surprised that I was within a few thousandths of an inch all the way along it. So that is what you get when you actually spend the time to make sure you're square and flush. Now I'm working on the groove that will house the blade and wedge. I cut out the wedge out of a piece of 3/8 pine. I like to use pine because it's a little more, it almost has a spring to it. But now I'm chiseling out the groove in the block, and that groove has an angle to it, and the angle is the angle of the wedge plus the angle of the chisel. This particular chisel did not have a whole lot of angle to it. It was only about a half a degree, if that, but enough to make it work. And then comes the work of fitting them in together. And at this point, I made a simple mistake of trimming off the wrong edge of the wedge. And so here I'm going with a mistake, and now I need to cut a new wedge because the other one was wrong. This introduced a whole series of problems that I wasn't expecting, because I drew the line for the initial wedge. The second wedge ended up being a slightly different measurement. Its degree was slightly off, which meant that I then had to shape it and put it back in and try it, and then that was something that overshaped, and so then I'd have to go back and shape it again, and it ended up being a little bit of trouble. But with some effort and time, I was able to bring it to the exact shape it needed to be, both in its wedge and in its design. So once I got it in, I got to play with it. I found out that the wedge was starting to get in the way of the chips coming out, and had to do some adjustments on there. Now, this is a grooving plane, and that means there needs to be a groove for the to create the grooving plane. And since I don't have a grooving plane to create the groove in the grooving plane, I have to chisel it out by hand. So that's what I'm doing here with the good old-fashioned chisel. I took my tongue and groove saw and actually cut out both sides of the groove first, and then went through and cleaned out the waste with the chisel. It was a very smooth system. Now I need to put the fence on it. If I was thinking ahead of time, I probably would have left enough wood in the block to basically have a fence in it. But unfortunately, I wasn't thinking that much, so I had to use another piece of oak, and I will glue it on there. So this is a piece of scrap red oak I had, and I'll be gluing it onto the white oak stock. And it looks good. I kind of like it. It adds a little bit of difference. I'll tell people that I did it intentionally, but oh well. Now I got the scraper out, and I'm smoothing down the sides now that it's all glued up and prepped. The scraper makes for a nice clean surface afterwards, so if there's any nicks or cuts, it cleans them down and makes it feel really good. Now I'm making it ergonomic, with the chisel and rasp, rounding off the corners, anywhere where my hand will be grabbing it, putting in indentations and slides so that the grip actually feels good. It's a little bit more of an English style, which I like. It feels good, and it's multi-purpose. Now that it is shaped and functioning, I can start to test it. And this is where I got to experiment with tuning it. And that is really, it was kind of a fun process of learning the tiny little things that can affect it, and how to make it work smoothly. Now that it's where I can put a little bit of stain and oil it, and there you go. Now that it's stained and oiled, I thought I would test it again, which changed a couple things, but ended up working pretty well. I eventually was able to fiddle with it, and got to where I like it.
So there you have it, my very own grooving plane. The first one I've made, and it will not be the last. I have many, many more to make. Now that I have a groove plane, I guess I can make one for a matching tongue. Yeah, and I might even make another grooving plane with the iron going the other way, so I can work if the grain and the wood is not quite what I want. And eventually I'd like to put a nicker in for doing cross-grain work. So one of the nice things about making myself is I can modify it everything I want to. The other nice thing is that this is heirloom quality. This is something that will last a long time, and if I take care of it, I can pass it on to my kids. So there you have it. I love the grain work in this. You can still see, because it was split lumber, you get to capture all of those rays coming out from the center of the tree. And I mean, I don't know if you guys can see it, but this really made my day. Really, just beautiful. I'm in love with that. And the curls it's making are pretty darn nice. I have some work to do to learn how to fine tune it. These are a little thicker than I'd like, but they work. So please let me know in the comments below, what do you like? Did you like this? Is this something you'd like to see me do more of? I have a lot of other projects on my mind, and I'd like to do some of them. So if you want to see them, let me know. And till next time, have a good day.